Hey guys, welcome to another video from Historic Militaria. Today we are looking at a clone of the SSH-40 Soviet helmet, but this is actually the M50 Hungarian helmet, and they are pretty darn close. As a matter of fact, some of the first shells that were used by the Hungarians in the immediate post-war period were actually supplied by the Soviets, until the Hungarians got around to making their own right about 1950. So it is obviously modeled very closely on the SSH-40, which was the typical combat helmet of the Soviet Union during World War II and for many years afterwards. And it was also the basis for a lot of Cold War era communist bloc countries. The only difference in a lot of them with like the Czech and the Pole and the Hungarian and the Soviet was rivet placement. The Polish helmets and the Czech helmets will have a higher rivet placement in various places up here, whereas the Hungarian and the Soviet both have a low rivet placement. And kind of the problem is these have almost the exact same spacing of rivets. So when you look at one just from, a quick glance, you're like, oh, that's a Soviet SSH-40. Combine it with the fact that most of the Hungarian M50s out there are in pretty poor condition. They're pretty well used, and from the exterior look, you might think you might be looking at a World War II era Soviet, when in fact you're actually looking at a Hungarian M50. Now, if you flip it over, it's pretty easy to tell it is not a Soviet helmet. The Hungarians used a very interesting liner. It's very much based on the Soviet liner of the three pads like this, but the Soviet ones are generally, and again there's variants, they're generally going to be sort of a black fake leather looking material, or a brownish fake leather kind of thin material with padding behind each one. This is a cloth material, and as you can see, it's got padding behind it, but it is cloth, and it's pretty awful looking, really. I don't know that I'd want to wear one of these for a long period of time. This one has got a cloth chin strap, which has just been kind of jury-rigged on there, because the original had obviously broken. And that's where I've noticed that a lot of the M50s I've seen are in pretty poor condition. They've been well used. This one obviously has seen quite a bit of service. And this example here, kind of the same thing, but this one is a little bit easier to tell that it's a Hungarian when you flip it over. This has got that typical Hungarian liner, and it's got a leather chin strap, which is what these would have had originally. They did come with a leather chin strap. If you find an SSH-40 with a leather chin strap and this kind of liner, you're probably looking at a Hungarian M50. I'm not going to say that no Soviet helmets had leather chin straps, but the vast majority had a cloth chin strap until later, when they kind of went to sort of an airborne / armored trooper or armored cavalry chin strap, which had more stability. But this is just a straight up leather chin strap that you're going to see on your Hungarian versions of this. So again, pretty awful condition on both of these. And just for good measure, we actually have a third one here with kind of a different paint scheme. This is almost a much darker green. This almost looks like a Romanian type green that you'll see on Romanian helmets, whereas these have more of a Soviet type drab green. This is a much more vivid green. And again, this one doesn't disappoint in the fact that it's been through quite a bit of number of years of service. And flip it over, and you've got your partial leather chin strap that is broken and been repaired with a cloth chin strap with your typical Hungarian liner inside there. Again, some of the original shells were actually supplied by the Soviet Union, so don't be surprised if you do see a Soviet shell. But again, that liner system and the chin strap are probably going to give it away. Now, I'm not saying that these are incredibly hard to find, but they are relatively rare in the sense that there's not a ton of them floating around out there, whereas, if you want a Soviet SSH-40 or 60 or Certainly the later Hungarian M70 and M90. M70s are a dime a dozen. They're pretty much everywhere. You can get them all day long. But if you're looking for an original M50, they can be a little bit tricky, a little bit difficult to find. And again, the condition on most of them is pretty atrocious. Even the ones that I've seen for sale in like Hungary itself, still pretty bad condition. So I kind of get the feeling they were well used. Whereas Polish helmets, a lot of Czech helmets, and even Soviet helmets, you're going to see in pretty nice condition. I mean, if you want to, excuse me, if you want a mint condition Polish helmet or Soviet helmet, pretty easy to get. Whereas one of these in nice shape, going to be fairly difficult. But wanted to look at an interesting piece of Cold War history that is often overlooked and not in a ton of collections because they are kind of derivative of the Soviet version and sort of overshadowed by it. As always, remember to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll be coming out with more stuff soon.